Beautiful no matter what's going on around us, no matter what the world is telling us. And here's how it all began. I want you to take a journey with me back to before you were born, when you were a disincarnate spirit out there in La La Land. And you heard this call, you heard a rumor. I don't know how the rumor mill works on the other side, but you know there is one. And according to the rumor mill, you heard this call that people on the earth needed help. They needed people to go there to bring up the light, to help transform the planet. And if you're like me, I'm such a helper, I can just see myself waving, I'll go, I'll help. Can you relate to that? Were you one of those that said, I'll go? Only trouble is, I didn't read the small print. You know how important the small print is. The small print was, while you're helping on the earth to transform the energy, you have to stretch and grow. I didn't get that part. You have to face trauma and overcome it, all while increasing the light. Oh, didn't know that. So I went to the earth plane, and like the rest of you, I chose who my parents were going to be, what gender I was going to be, what race, color, creed I was going to be, to support the purpose for which I came, because every aspect of those choices affect both the challenges and the blessings that we have to walk through. And then I chose what my gifts or talents or abilities would be, or lack of. Some of them were lack of. And finally I chose my birth date, the day I would come in, because the astrological influences would determine my strengths and abilities. For instance, I chose to come in during a Gemini configuration. Geminis are communicators. And for my purpose, for what I eventually became, that was important. Now, when I was a little kid, they used to tell me, Amber, be quiet, you talk too much. Now they pay me. You know, I love to tell my relatives. But remember the small print that we didn't read. That small print gets you every time. That you'll have all those challenges and conflicts in order to increase your light. They didn't tell us that we would forget who and what we were, that we would forget our oneness with God, that we would forget all the power of the divine that we have in us. So the first obstacle on coming to this earth plane, honey, I'm home, the first obstacle is boom, where two or more are gathered, there's conflict, right? I love the old Bible verse, but I change it because I know where two or more are gathered, there's always conflict. Whether it's your family, whether it's where you work, or even churches. You wouldn't think churches would have conflict. But let me tell you, you have this many people, everybody having a different opinion. Of course, we're here to bring forth our light. And that will not happen unless we have a little of that conflict. Now, there's a book I'm going to do in September. I'm sort of giving a preview of it today, called Eye of the Storm. And they're back there on the bookshelf already, or the desk back there. Eye of the Storm was a book written by Reverend Gary Simmons. He's a unity minister. And it's all about how to handle conflict, how to handle challenges, and how to communicate during them. It's one of the most important books. I used to make it mandatory for anyone wanting to become a unity member. This church is so wonderfully peaceful, I didn't feel I had to do that here. But the book is so good, I think everyone would benefit from it. Let's start with the 4 behaviors. And when I list the 4, see if you can find yourself there. When you're faced with conflict, do you resist and run away from it at any cost? Resist it? Or are you one of those that does, I'll control or I'll be controlled? Take control of it. Or do you need to be right? You know, the Course in Miracles always says, do you want to be at peace or do you want to be right? And that's the most important decision in conflict. Do I want to be at peace or do I want to be right? And the final one is, do you attack or defend yourself because you feel denied, deprived, persecuted, and abused? Anybody relate to any of those 4? No, nobody relates to any of them. Oh, come on. The thing to remember on good old planet Earth, we live in a world of duality where there appears to be opposites. So the biggest lesson to remember is there is no one against you. Nobody. is against you. Now, the first time I heard that, and I heard it from Gary Simmons himself, I said, oh, wait a minute, I got a list. You want to see my list of people that are against me? Come on. But if we really believe in unity, that there is only one presence, one power, then how can anybody be against us? The ancient symbol for God was a circle. So if we're at this side of the circle, and someone at the opposite side has a totally opposite point of view, they're not against us, they're simply a part of the whole. And all about being here in this world of duality is learning to live in that field of opposites without conflict. The second part we have to realize is whatever is within us is without. Anything that's in our face today has its roots inside of us. Nothing can oppose us because it comes from within us. Oh, that was a hard one for me to learn. I do not like that one. Hard one for me to learn. Conflict is created when we resist or are at tension with whatever is before us. However we respond to it. Jesus said, make friends with your enemy. And I think that's what he was referring to. And in class last week, someone mentioned the quote, I've met the enemy, and it is me. You know that one? Now, the enemy doesn't have to be a person. It can be a situation you're faced with that you don't want to walk through. And you can see that as sort of an enemy situation. Oh, I don't want this. But we let go of resistance and we walk through it knowing there is a reason. Especially in this day and age with all the increased energy and the shifting in consciousness. I had a dream last night, probably because knowing I was giving this message today. And in the dream, I was looking at all these beautiful, enormous houses and all this wonderful stuff and all that, I could have. And then I was talking to another aspect of myself because in a dream it's just like Bible metaphysics. Every person, place, or thing is an aspect of yourself. And this other person that I was talking to was saying, no, I don't want all that expanded energy. So all I want to do is go back to the farm and milk cows. I grew up in the country. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, you've had this expanded experience, and you want to just go back and milk cows. But it was such a wonderful symbolic dream of how the universe keeps saying, expand, expand, grow, grow. And there's a part of me that just wants to go back to the way things were, simple, quiet, no pressure. What a beautiful, beautiful dream. Everything that is for you or against you has its roots within you. Ooh, ooh. The law of attraction is also the law of opposites. A paradox, but both are true. It appears that life is happening to us, but it's really happening through us. God cannot do to you only what God can do through you. And then we start reacting to everything that's going on. An example, are any of you drivers that when you drive and somebody cuts you off, it immediately annoys you? And you said, that person's a jerk, or that woman's crazy. It's all about me all of a sudden. How do we know what's going on with them? Maybe they have a family emergency and they're on their way to the hospital. We don't know, but suddenly it's all about us. And we give it meaning by what we believe about it. He's a jerk, she's crazy. It's all about me. The hardest personal example, and I've shared a little bit about this before, my first board president. That's why I'm so glad to have Doug, because he's so good to work with. All our board members are wonderful here at Unity. But my very first church, my first board president, I swear to God, she was a bully. She really was a bully, not just to me, but later I found out she was that way with everybody. And I just was sure she was out to get me. She was about to do me in, and it was draining me. I was exhausted. My life was miserable. And I knew I had to make one of three choices. I could leave ministry, and I seriously thought of leaving ministry. I thought, or I could die, as much energy as she was robbing from me. I thought I could die. That would be an easy way out. The third choice was I could become strong. And for some reason, I chose to become strong. Now I can look back and say what a blessing she was. She forced me. I always tell people, I was really sweet before I became a minister. I was so sweet. And you know what? You can't be sweet. If you're running a big organization, if you're dealing with all kinds of people, sweet will get you 5 minutes. You've got to be strong. Not antagonistic, but strong. I had to learn to be strong. And here's the key thing I got from this book. This woman pointed to places in me where I had a weak sense of wholeness and self-worth. She pointed to places in me where I had a weak sense of wholeness and self-worth. And that's the blessing of adversaries. Whether they're people or experiences, however you're reacting, is coming from your wounded self and that trauma that needs to be released. In his book, Gary Simmons says, ask yourself, what inner resource are you lacking that if possessed instead of insecurity or fear, would enable you to relate to the person or the situation as not being a threat? Is this inner resource self-confidence or personal power? What do you need that is missing from your own internal storehouse of personal resources that would allow you to be in the situation without being intimidated by it? Wow. I love it in the Course in Miracles when they say, whenever you're up against anything like that, show me your blessing, O Holy Child of God. Show me your blessing. Everything is there to bless us. Now, interestingly enough, when I finally became strong within myself, not antagonistic, but strong within myself, she ended up leaving, moving away. Because once you face that, either it moves away or it no longer bothers you. Even if it's there, it no longer bothers you. It has no energy anymore because you're healed and whole within yourself. Do you see how this works? Now, the second lesson is learning to handle any kind of conflict or criticism, any kind of criticism or conflict. You are not your experience. You're something greater. Reverend Simmons said, they, meaning your experiences, have no power in and of themselves, but become powerful when you fear them or make them seem to be against you. As soon as you see them as against you, you're giving them power. Now, there's a much better story, one of my favorite stories on how to handle criticism. It's a story about a monkey and a Sufi. But instead of it being a Sufi, let's call it a Unity Truth student, okay? There was a Unity Truth student walking in the jungle. And he was looking around in the jungle, and there was a tree with monkeys in it, and one of the monkeys took a coconut and threw it right at him, hit him in the head. He simply picked up the coconut, drank the coconut milk, ate the coconut meat, and took the shell and made a bowl out of it. And then he looked up and said, thank you for your criticism of me. That's how we handle criticism. Now that I look back, I can look at that board president and say, thank you for your criticism of me. It made me strong. I still don't want to do lunch with her, but that's okay. You don't have to do lunch with adversaries. You simply become at peace within yourself. So let's go back to the story. We've just landed on planet Earth. Honey, I'm home. And immediately we have conflict, challenges, and along with that, that feeling of abandonment, because we've totally forgotten who and what we are and the power that we have within us. So there are 4 things we have to do. We decide, who am I going to be in this situation? How am I going to respond? Who am I going to be? And then we have to separate fact from opinion. If it's fact, how do I deal with it? If it's opinion, let it go. And the third thing, what part of this can I use? And 4, let the rest go. That's the big one. Now, the author's been married a number of times. It's a prerequisite for a unity minister. You have to be married at least 3 times. So I fit the requirements. But he always asks people, he always says, what have my past wife experiences taught me? And I think they taught him as well as anyone who reads this book enough wisdom to get through conflict. Now, I'm going to read you another, this is my favorite paragraph in the book. Listen to the metaphors of how we describe relationships. I'm sure you can all relate to at least one of these. He said, in my relationship with others, I've had my heart broken, my butt kicked, my ego bruised. I've been stabbed in the back by a friend, raked over the coals by a boss, and pounced on by my wife. I've been crushed, stepped on, left hanging, and blasted. Notice the words he's using to describe relationships. Is that not perfect? And have you ever used those words to describe a relationship that you've been in? The eye of the storm. The title means in every storm, in every conflict, there's a center. And if you grew up with tornadoes like I did in Minnesota, in the center of a tornado, there's a calm center. And that's what we have within us if we stay in that center, knowing who and what we are, standing in our beingness. We can get through any challenge or conflict without resistance, with minimal conflict, with peace, with stillness, with calm. Interesting message from the Gospel of St. Thomas. There were many Gospels. Only 4 of them made the Bible that we know of today. But the Gospel of St. Thomas has not only been found, but it's probably quoted more now than the other 4 Gospels. He says, if you bring, this will keep you up till 3 in the morning. The first time I read this, I had to read it 3 times. If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will kill you. Now, isn't that a tongue twister? But think about it. This is all about consciousness. This is all about knowing who and what you are as a divine being. If you have that consciousness of the presence, you can stand in that eye of the storm, no matter what's going on around you, and feel safe. You'll be saved by it, for lack of a better way of saying it. If you do not have that within you, then yeah, you're going to have enemies. Yeah, you're going to see people opposing you, against you, out to get you. And it will eventually kill you, all by how you see it. Easier said than done, huh? To stand in that eye of the storm. Now, coming September, I'm going to wait till the week after next because I'm going to be visiting my son in California next week, and Liz and Jerry will be here. Please support them and support the church while I'm gone so I know I can go away and you'll still be here when I get back. We're so lucky to have him here, so I can go away now and then. In September, we'll be doing a series on the book, giving you the tools and the know-how of how to handle conflict, what to say, how to communicate, all with the tools that are in this book. So I have the book back there if you're interested in it. If you're not, just come every Sunday and we'll cover most of it. Great tools for how to get through conflict and situations. Now, I have a P.S. on this message that has nothing to do with the book, nothing to do with anything except my class coming up on Tuesday, the treasure mapping class. And the reason, Wednesday, thank you. It takes a village to keep me on track because my brain never knows what day it is. The treasure mapping class, I got to tell you, guess where the first treasure map was made? Anybody know? At Unity. That's a good answer. Unity did kind of coin the tradition, didn't it? But believe it or not, the Bible has the first treasure map. I was in awe the first time I read this. It's in the Old Testament with Jacob. Now you got to know the story of Jacob. He had 2 wives and a miserable father-in-law that tricked him because he wanted to marry Rachel. And she had a veil over her face during the wedding. And when she removed the veil, the father had, put Leah in there instead of Rachel. So then he ended up having, those days you could have more than one wife. He ended up having to work another 6 years to marry Rachel, the other daughter. Long story. But anyway, he's finally worked enough years to pay off his debt to his father-in-law. And in order to leave, he wants some compensation for all the time he's given to his father-in-law. And he knows his father-in-law doesn't want to pay him anything, so he has an idea. He says to his father-in-law, he had to be as tricky as his father-in-law. He said, look, you've got all these goats and sheep. You keep the pure white ones. Give me the speckled and the spotted sheep and goats. Just those, the speckled and the spotted. Well, the father-in-law thought he was getting a good deal here because there weren't that many speckled and spotted goats. So you know what Jacob did? He took some branches and peeled the bark off and put the speckled and spotted branches in front of the watering trough. And when the sheep and the goats, and when they came there to drink and to mate, they were looking at all these speckled and spotted branches. So guess what happened to the herd? He had all these babies, speckled and spotted lambs and goats. The first treasure mapping. That which we constantly see before us, that which we constantly hold in our consciousness, is what we will draw to us, as within, so without, as above, so below. Let us pray. We pray from that center of the eye of the storm, that still place within us where we are calm and confident, no matter what is going on around us, no matter who is before us. We know the truth of our being. Or as Heather so beautifully sang this morning, we know we are beautiful, no matter what the world is telling us. And we stand in that truth lovingly and peacefully, and allowing our life and world to unfold around us. Whatever is happening doesn't matter, for we stand in the truth of our being, and we are so blessed in each other's presence as we say, thank you, Father, Mother, God, in the nature of the Christ. And so it is. Amen.